Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all of the different players that I just think are really interesting in this conference. I wanted to go every team, make sure you guys had a couple of players to watch on every single team in this conference, just because I don't love skipping any teams. In any conference preview, want to make sure I touch on every single team, so that was kind of my best way to do that. But let's go ahead and get forward to some superlatives and my official championship pick for the ACC. Thought about doing all of the picks, doing all of the records. I don't want to tip any picks for week one or for any of the out-of-conference games, and I also just think that's a little bit counterintuitive. I don't think it's super helpful. I think it gets a little bit complicated, and you could have an incredible lineup, and then you have one team that's entirely out of place. It makes your picks look a lot worse than they actually are. So I decided to just do championship pick and the champion for this one, and I'll break down in a little bit more detail as we get closer to the season. Maybe some actual schedule picks, some actual outright record picks for some of these teams. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And let's start with game of the year. For me, it's Clemson at Louisville. Now, you could say Clemson at Georgia Tech. You could say Miami at Louisville. You could say a number of different games on this list that absolutely could fall into this category. I see this one as the biggest one. And I think Clemson lost this game a year ago where they just got physically beat up. There's no two ways about that. That defensive line for Louisville absolutely dominated the offensive line for Clemson, so they're coming into this game with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they very much are in a position where they're going to want to get this one back. Now, if you're on the Louisville side, if they can win this game, they're going to be in pole position to get to Charlotte. There's no doubt about that. Now, a lot of stuff will happen before November 14th, but I have to imagine if Louisville's good enough to beat Clemson on that day, they're good enough to beat some of the teams on the past days of the season. So not super nervous about this one being a marquee one. I think one of these teams is going to find their way to the ACC championship. It might just be the winner of this one. So it's going to be awesome to watch this one unfold. Kind of been the thorn in the side of Clemson the last couple of years. Clemson would be on thin ice if they were to lose this one, especially if they had dropped the week one game against LSU. Then you got to win the ACC to get into the CFP, and that's a tall order. So going to be really interesting to watch this one. I think when it comes down to it, there are very few games that I think will be more impactful on the season than this one on November 14th. The underrated game of the year for me goes up to Durham, North Carolina. I don't know why I forgot where Duke was, but Georgia Tech at Duke on October 17th, I think is a really interesting game. And I think these are two teams that you probably aren't circling as absolute CFP contenders or absolute ACC contenders. But two teams you're watching kind of out of the corner of your eye, right? You have Darian Mensah, you have Haynes King, you have a lot of talent around them. You have some very good players, especially on the outside for both these teams. I think one of these winners could very well be the second team in Charlotte, whether that's against Louisville or Clemson or Miami or whoever. I think this is a game that could be huge for one of these teams. Duke has a little bit tougher of a schedule than Georgia Tech has, at least in conference. Georgia Tech does have that Georgia game at the end of the year that makes things a little bit tougher, but at the end of the day, I think this could be a game that we look back on at the end of the season and say, it's only one game separating those two teams, and it was that game up there at Duke. Whoever wins it could be in very good position to make a little bit of a run at this thing, especially if it's Georgia Tech because of the ability to kind of manage that schedule as they see fit. This is probably the toughest road game they have. So if Georgia Tech's able to win this one, it's really interesting for the Yellow Jackets in a hurry. My surprise team of the year is the Virginia Tech Hokies. I had them last year. Being my surprise team, I actually had them in the championship last year. So was a little bit crazy there, but maybe I was a year early. Maybe I was a year early on this one. They did lose some great pieces like I'm blanking on his name now, and that's very frustrating, but a very talented receiver for them, that Jalen Lane. That's what I was going for. Jalen Lane has moved on to the NFL, but with Kyron Jones being fully healthy, I love the addition of Terrion Stewart, like we talked about in the last segment. Uniquely talented, uniquely tough running back there. And then Cameron Seldon is a very talented wide receiver they brought in. I think that's someone that could really explode this year in this offense. I really like this team. I think it's a team that has a good chip on their shoulder. I don't think enough people are really talking about them. And although Brent Pry has had some tough moments up there at times, I think this is a team that can really make some noise. They play South Carolina in week one. Even if they lose that game, if they lose it close, I think you could be looking at a team that can make an interesting run in this conference. Maybe not to the title game. I'm probably not going to make that mistake again. But at the end of the day, I think Virginia Tech is just a little bit better than some people are giving them credit for. SMU is going to be my disappointing team of the year. And this is a little bit weird because I don't have a great reason here. It's just kind of a gut feeling. When you get this deep into college football, and especially in the world that we live in now where everything is up in the air and everything is up for question every single offseason, I kind of just take shots at a certain point, and this is kind of one of those shots. I think losing Brashard Smith is going to be massive. I think losing Elijah Roberts on that defensive line is going to be huge, and I think this is a team that when you look back at last year, played great football at different times, also got away with some stuff at different times. In that Duke game, won by, I believe, 2 points when they had 6 turnovers. That's probably not going to work this year against just about any team in this conference. So I think when I look at this SMU team, I don't think they'll be bad. I don't think they're going to go 5-7 or 4-8 and totally fall off a cliff. I just think that fan base is looking at this year saying, all right, let's go back to the ACC title. Let's go back to the CFP and see what happens this time. I don't think it's all that cut and dry, especially with a lot of the teams right in their same realm, like Georgia Tech, like Louisville, like Pitt, that could really throw a wrench into this thing, and then that schedule is a nightmare. I don't think they're going to be able to make it through unscathed. I think it's going to be a weird year for the SMU Mustangs. Moving on to Freshman of the Year, it's Gideon Davidson. There's a couple of different guys I could have thrown into this. Tay Harris down at Georgia Tech is a very interesting guy to watch there, but Gideon Davidson has the most opportunity and probably has the most talent of any freshman in this entire conference. He is a very, very uniquely talented player. He's a guy that can really get upfield fast, has a little bit of physicality, maybe not the most physical back in the world coming out of high school, but absolutely is someone that can have some of that breakaway speed, some of that big playability. And we talked about it earlier with Adam Randall, with Jay Haynes. You can kind of ease him into this thing. Obviously, you're going to want to use him early. He will be seen probably in the LSU game, but at the very least, you have enough confidence in the guys around him to where you don't have to immediately throw him into the fire, kind of like LSU, their first week opponent, did last year with Caden Durham. So I think you're in a position where you can ease this guy in, and then once he gets going, I think he's going to be really hard to stop. He's a very, very talented kid. I don't know if it's going to be, 1,400 yards or anything crazy. I think it's going to be a very productive season from the freshman running back at Clemson. Transfer of the year, I'm going Eric Rivers, the wide receiver that came over from FIU to Georgia Tech this upcoming year to kind of fill the Eric Singleton void that moved on to Auburn. Very talented kid. A guy that has all the speed in the world, really, really professional route runner. One of those guys that when he gets the ball in his hands, watch out. He can make a touchdown happen from just about anywhere. And I think when you talk about Buster Faulkner as a play caller, the number one thing he does, about as well as anyone in the country, is get the ball in the hands of his guys as they're moving forward and moving forward into space, more likely. And Eric Rivers does that about as well as anyone in the country. I talk about him and Eric Singleton because that's kind of the trade of sorts that Georgia Tech had to make this offseason. I don't think you're going to see that big of a difference. I think this kid is very, very talented. I think the route tree might be a little bit more complete than Eric Singleton's was, and I think he's going to make all types of plays for this Georgia Tech offense, maybe even be the player of the year for Georgia Tech this upcoming year. Offensive player of the year, I did go chalk. It is going to be Cade Klubnik. I think when you look at the schedule, when you look at the talent around him, when you look at the comfort he has in this offense, it's hard not to pick this guy. The last game that he played was against Texas, and it's about as good of a game that quarterback played just about all of last season, and he came out on the wrong side of it. He played a very tough defense and made just about every single throw you could possibly want him to make. So he's a very talented kid. I think it's going to be hard for anyone to top him. Now, maybe one of his wide receivers goes absolutely crazy and tops him. Maybe Miller Moss has a great season over it. Maybe Isaac Brown steals this thing over at Louisville and has a great year on the ground. Maybe Jamal Haynes as well at Georgia Tech. But as I see it, I think Cade Klubnik is the guy to watch. I think he's going to be the offensive player of the year in this conference. And I'm just going to move on, to the other side of the ball on the same exact team. TJ Parker is a freak in every sense of the word. He is a guy that will make all types of big-time plays for this team. You look at LSU right about now. I don't know if they feel overly confident in that offensive line room that they have. Now, I think they're going to be relatively fine, but I think there's going to be moments where you look up and you say, TJ Parker's just causing all types of problems for this team, and I don't think it's going to get a lot better when it comes to the tackle talent that he will face throughout the year. I think this guy causes all types of problems. There are a number of talented defenders in this conference. there's no one that's quite like TJ Parker. So I'm going to go with TJ Parker there. I think Avion Terrell could absolutely do this on that defense. I think a couple other guys from some different teams could make some noise, but maybe Bruin Bain down there at Miami could make some noise. But if I'm picking one guy, it's going to be TJ Parker. I think he's the top edge off the board, maybe even the top player off the board in this upcoming class, depending on how this season goes. Coach of the Year, I'm going to go Brent Key. I think he's done an incredible job down there in Atlanta, about 10 minutes from me, actually. And I think he's a guy that can continue to kind of build this thing up. Now, one of the big problems that they've had in years past is they lose one game that they're just not supposed to lose in any world. Whether it's Bowling Green a couple of years ago. I don't think they had a atrocious one a year ago, but they've had some games where it's just, if you win that game, if you just execute at a little bit higher of a level and not lose that game, you're in a much better footing at the end of the season than they eventually were. So I think you head into the season, if they can take care of business in the games that they're meant to take care of business in, they're probably going to be a 9-3 team, and then I don't know how you deny this guy. Now, if Clemson goes undefeated, if Mike Norvell bounces back with 8 wins, if some other things, if Mario Cristobal gets to the ACC title, definitely some things that could throw a wrench into this. But if I'm picking a coach of the year, I'm probably going to pick one of my favorite coaches in the entire country, and that's Brent Key over there at Georgia Tech. So that brings me to the championship game. As you can imagine, giving coach of the year to Brent Key, he's got his team in the championship game. I have Georgia Tech against Clemson up there in Charlotte to finish off the year. I think the schedule just sets up so well for Georgia Tech. I think they're such a steady team that is going to be able to start the season very comfortably. Now, that Colorado game is huge. If they can be able to win that game, then you have a couple of weeks to really get things rolling. Then it's Clemson coming to town, and Clemson's going to be a huge game. If they win that one, I can almost promise you they're going to be in Charlotte at the end of the year. Even if they lose, I still think they're in great position to make a run to this position and be right there with Clemson at the end of the year like SMU was. Now, will they be able to shock the world and get to the CFP and maybe knock Clemson out of it? I'm going to say no. I think Clemson repeats as the champions of the ACC. This team's just better than everyone else. I think there's a lot of analysis I could throw at you. There's a lot of cool words and buzzwords I could throw at you. They have the best quarterback. They have the best coach, the best coordinators, the best defense, the best playmakers. They just about have the best everything in this conference. Now, offensive line, maybe you lean towards Miami. There's a couple of different ways that you could look at that. Running back, maybe you lean towards a Louisville. This team is different in every sense of the word. I think Dabo was right in the way that he approached this thing, and I think this year will be something of a victory lap around this conference. I don't want to say what I have them at right now, but wouldn't be surprised if they went undefeated is the way that I'll put that right now. I know Dabo Swinney made a little bit of a comment about them going 16-0. Well, can't do that until you go 13-0, and I think Clemson might just do that this year. So Clemson is my pick to win this conference. Not a special pick, not a sexy pick by any means, but it's absolutely the team that I see as being the difference maker in this one. I am going to roll with a lot of other people with Georgia Tech. I think that's a very good team that's incredibly coached, that has a quarterback situation that is as stable as just about anyone in the conference. If Haynes King goes down, I think Aaron Philo is more than capable of leading them to an ACC title. So cannot wait to see that one unfold. A lot of teams vying for that second spot in that conference. And then maybe if Clemson loses a couple that we don't see them losing right now, maybe there's a couple of spots up there to be taken. But it's an incredible conference. Cannot wait to see the ACC unfold. That felt like the most manageable conference, at least in my eyes, as we get into these predictions. Tomorrow it's probably the least manageable. In the Big 12, I have no idea. It's my favorite conference in the world. Absolutely love the Big 12 with everything that I have, but it's a very, very tough conference to put together. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see what happens there. I will be back tomorrow to record that one. Make sure that I get that out to you guys because we're doing all the predictions this week. We're getting it all off our chest. We'll get to the Big 12 tomorrow. Please like, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. Leave any questions or comments you have in the comment section, and I'll see you tomorrow for America's Conference, the Big 12.